Um, I'm not really clear on my question, but I keep wanting to ask about our willingness to process emotions. It just seems every talk and my law of attraction keeps coming back down to my willingness. And, like, I don't know, when you're talking about these situations where there's all these projections coming, which is getting more and more, and I feel that, like, I have a fear that I will be at a state where I haven't got to a point where I have confidence, and that emotionally I'll just run away. Like, if people are going to kill me and I have the opportunity to not be in truth, it's like I wouldn't think about it, I would just run.
Yep.
And like, I feel like that as a microcosm of my life is a microcosm of that at the moment, where it's much easier just to run away. And I find the moment that I have the desire come up inside of me and the prayer goes up to God, okay, what am I afraid of? And then I'll start shaking. And then the intellect goes, oh, well, you've been processing for a little bit now, maybe an hour. Let's have some ice cream. And then...
Yep.
And it's just like, I don't know. I'm just saying stuff, really, but I wish I could put it into a question.
Can I ask the question for you?
Yeah.
Fear is dominating me. How do I get out of that state?
Yes.
Okay. Fear is the most difficult state to get out of, I feel. And there's only one way to get out of it. So if you can think, here's your soul, and your soul is full of fears and terrors, right? And my soul has got a lot of them too, by the way, still. And I've been dealing with fears and terrors for many years now, and so I've still got many. I've found the only way that I can ever get out of this state of fear and terror is to actually allow myself to fully feel that fear and talk to God, pray to God while I'm doing it. That's the only way I've been able to process my fears.
I'm feeling a self-judgment about those type of fears, and that they're being used as an excuse to avoid this, avoid deeper things.
Well, Josh, there are two types of fears, and you're right. There are some fears that we use, that we construct to avoid things. So when you know that you're using a fear, let's say you have a fear of telling the truth. So you know you're afraid of telling truth. So what you do instead, and this is where your mind can be used quite powerfully, is you start noticing every time you don't tell the truth, and you go back to that situation and tell the truth. So for example, you walk away from somebody and you just realise, oh, I didn't say the truth then. So what you do is you turn around and you go back and force yourself to tell you the truth, and right at that moment, feel the emotional response you have to that. Because it's that emotion that you avoided in your fear of telling the truth. Does that make sense? So if you confront your fears directly, head on like that, and whenever you find you didn't do it, go back and do it. You're allowed to make mistakes, but go back and correct them. So when you find yourself running away from situations, turn around and run back into them. Now, the fear you have is if you turn around and run back into them, that things are going to get pretty bad. They might, because that might be your law of attraction that needs to happen to feel your emotions more fully. But I feel at the end there is only one basic fear. And do you know what that is?
I'm not sure.
It's the fear that you will be overwhelmed. So in other words, we're all often afraid that if we confront our fears, and get into our causal emotion that we'll be so overwhelmed we might go crazy, or we'll go nuts, or our whole life will get destroyed, or I'll die. But either one of those things is just the fear of being overwhelmed. So if I know that fear exists in me, start talking to God about those fears. As you receive divine love, many of these fears will go away. As you receive, you'll process many of these fears.
A lot of times it seems that I know what will happen if I take action out of something.
Yep.
And it's exactly what I don't want to happen, but I know it will happen if I say the truth. Or
can I just say something? Many of you have already found that what you think you know, after you did something, you realised you didn't know it. Have you found that already? What I've found in talking to many people is that they know there's going to be a certain outcome, but they don't factor in the fact of these facts. And that is, every time you operate harmonious to God's laws and principles, outcomes are usually much better than what you could ever predict. It's only when you operate out of harmony with God's laws and principles that outcomes get worse. All right? Now, the only way you can ever test that truth is by putting that truth into action. In other words, taking actions that always are in harmony with love and truth and seeing what the results are. Like, I've seen people totally surprised. They believed with all of their being that if they took a certain course of action, this result would happen. And yet, that result doesn't happen. Is Simon Denny here today? Simon? No, he's not. Anyway, I just know, I know of a man, it looked like he was going to jail for good, for a while, because of some things that happened. And he rang me up and he says, what, he emailed me actually, he said, what do I do? And when we talked in the next group, I just said to him, tell the truth. Right? Tell the truth. And he says, what do you mean? I got angry with my mother. Yes, tell the truth. Say that to the judge. I got angry with my mother. My mother, was drinking with me and whatever happened, I forget the exact circumstance that happened, and Simon got angry and eventually got this baseball bat, I think it was, and bashed the rear window of his mother's car in. And as a result, his mother rang up the police and sent him to jail. Right? Now, I said to him, tell the truth and see what happens. Right? And he was firmly convinced that he was going to be put in jail for a period of time, as was, by the way, the police who were prosecuting him, and also his mother, who wanted him in jail. Right? Anyway, he wasn't put in jail. But the judge was very surprised that he told the truth. And so surprised, in fact, that he felt the truth from this man, and in the end, as a result of feeling it, dismissed the case. Right?
No, I've felt that happen.
And he thought that it was going to be totally the opposite thing occur. You see, he was judging it through his own personal experience before of how everything would go. Because of some unhealed emotion in him that he deserved to be put in jail, Mum thought he deserved to be put in jail, the police thought that he deserved to be put in jail, and all these other things, right? But what he did was he just told the truth, and all the things that he thought would happen didn't happen. But even if they do happen, at least you've told the truth, which is still upholding God's laws. See, what happens when you do anything different is that everything in God's universe is actually against you. This is very important to understand. God's constructed an entire universal system based around truth and love. Every time you avoid truth and love in your own life, every time you avoid living in that space, all of God's laws are against you. Right? Now, I don't know about you, but I'd rather have everyone on this planet against me and all of God's laws for me. That's my personal opinion. And the way that you can do that is by bringing yourself in harmony with God's laws and principles, not listening to your fears, but rather confronting them and dealing with the underlying emotions. And when you do that, what will happen is that all of God's laws are now working for you. And in addition to that, every single one of the spirits who are connected to God's laws in the spirit world are also now working for you. So it's like you've just got this great army behind you, even though you're an army of one facing the world. Does that make sense? And we need to remember these things when we go into the soul battles that we go into. Because remember, what's happening right now on this planet is a battle for your soul. That's what's happening. It's not a physical warfare that's happening, it's a spiritual one. A battle for your soul. And how you respond is going to depend on whether you grow in love or degrade in your condition into fear. How you respond is just how you use your will in this process. So my suggestion is understand, even though you may not completely firmly believe it at this point in time, understand that God is a God of love and she has constructed all of her laws and principles to support you when you are in a state of love and truth. The only time that support cannot occur is when you're in error. That's the only time it can occur. And that's the time when we have most of our difficulties, honestly. So allow yourself to have some confidence in God and those principles.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, it's just hard to see that when where we are now, like seeing the bigger things that we're going to have to face.
Yes.
They just seem... So it's always just good just to remember, just deal with what's going on now.
Yes. Go in the now, deal with the cause, but understand, I'm doing this because I'm loyal to love. I'm doing this because I'm going to be loyal to truth come what may. And if come what may means me dying, then that has to come what may. If come what may means me being tortured to death, that's come what may. I am going to stay loyal to this truth. Now obviously, I'll have emotions come up when I'm in that state. Every one of these emotions that I release, I'll receive more divine love, and eventually I'll get to a state of one with God, and I will be able to do everything in harmony with God's laws and principles at that point without fear at all. I will just have no fear left within me. Just imagine that. Like, it's just an amazing place to be. To have no fear at all about any issue at all. Now you've got freedom, right? When you're in that space. And if you remember, that's where the goal is, and all this stuff that we're going through right now is just the way to get to that place. Right? And so, yes, I'm going to have to confront this fear, and yes, I'm going to have some very unpleasant events through my law of attraction to confront some of my fears. Just like, I got stung by the jellyfish this morning, which I felt was an unpleasant event. I'm going to have these unpleasant events continue to occur until all of these fears within me are confronted and released.
Thanks for that.
Yep.
Yeah, just giving me more confidence.
Yeah.